Welcome to our channel. Today we are taking a deep dive into the incredible 200-year journey of China, from a struggling empire to a global superpower. How did a nation once crippled by wars and famine become a rival to the world's greatest economies? Let's explore the history of this modern giant. In the 18th century, during the Qing dynasty, China was a massive empire that hosted a quarter of the world's population. Especially during the Ming era, the Chinese economy and technology made it the most powerful country in Asia. By the 19th century, the Western world entered a new era by completing the Industrial Revolution on a global scale. In contrast, China remained largely closed to foreign trade due to its policy of self-sufficiency. This isolation would eventually lead to the West forcing its way into the Chinese market. Great Britain, the greatest colonial power of the 19th century, was purchasing tea, silk, and porcelain from China. However, China did not want to accept European goods in return, demanding silver instead. This caused a massive flow of silver from Europe into China. Over time, this situation disrupted Britain's trade balance. To solve this, the British began selling opium produced in India to China in exchange for tea. Although China initially accepted this trade, its economy and public health soon began to collapse. When the Qing administration banned opium, the First Opium War began in 1839. China could not resist and lost the war. With the Treaty of Nanking in 1842, it ceded Hong Kong to Britain and was forced to open many of its ports to Europe. In the Second Opium War of 1856, China was defeated once again, this time by France and Britain. With the Treaty of Tientsin, European states were granted the right to open embassies, and many new ports were opened to Westerners. Foreigners were given the authority to travel into China's interior and purchase land. Most importantly, the importation of opium was legalized. However, when the Chinese later rejected the agreement, the Allies restarted the war and occupied Beijing. With a humiliating treaty signed in 1860, the Chinese Empire became a semi-colony. At the end of the 1800s, a nationalist movement known as the Boxers reacted to this situation and attacked foreigners. A coalition of 8 countries sent troops to China and occupied Beijing. The rebellion was suppressed in a short time. By the beginning of the 1900s, China was a country that had largely lost its sovereignty. The Qing dynasty gradually lost its legitimacy. By 1911, revolutionaries led by Sun Yat-sen overthrew the Qing dynasty and established the Republic of China. Thus, the 2,000-year-old imperial era in China came to an end. The 3 principles of the people would form the foundations of modern China. However, after Sun Yat-sen's death in 1925, central authority collapsed, and the country was divided into regions ruled by warlords. During this period, China remained vulnerable to foreign intervention, chaos deepened, and the economy completely collapsed. In 1926, Chiang Kai-shek, who took over the Chinese Nationalist Party, launched the Northern Expedition against the warlords. This campaign ended successfully in 1928. However, shortly after, the conflict between the nationalists and the communists turned into the Civil War. In 1932, the Japanese invasion, which began in the Manchuria region, started to expand southward by 1937. The Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese Nationalist Party paused their civil war to resist the Japanese occupation. Thus, the Second Sino-Japanese War broke out. This war ended in 1945 with Japan's defeat. Approximately 20 million Chinese lost their lives during the war. Following Japan's withdrawal, the Civil War resumed. Thanks to the support of the vast majority of the people, the Chinese Communist Party managed to win. The nationalists led by Chiang Kai-shek were forced to flee to Taiwan. 1949 was the year of the final shift. On October 1st, 1949, Mao Zedong announced the establishment of the People's Republic of China in Beijing. However, the world did not recognize this country and instead accepted Chiang Kai-shek's administration in Taiwan as the real Republic of China. Undeterred, Mao continued his struggle and first initiated land reform in rural areas. People's communes were established. The properties of feudal landlords were confiscated, and the land was distributed to the peasants. Landlords who resisted were executed one by one. In 1953, industrialization was launched with the support of the Soviet Union. More than 300 large facilities were established. At least one workshop was established in every village. However, as peasants were pulled away from the fields, food production plummeted. This led to a famine in the early 1960s, and nearly 30 million people lost their lives. After the food catastrophe, Mao stepped back for a while. However, in 1966, he launched the Cultural Revolution. He purged bourgeois elements and began destroying traditional Chinese culture. Universities were closed and scientific studies were halted. Millions of people were sent to re-education camps. The result was a 10-year stagnation. By the end of the 1960s, China also had a falling out with the Soviet Union. The People's Republic of China stood completely alone. Fortunately, Mao began negotiations with Europe in 1970. In 1971, the United Nations recognized the PRC as the sole Chinese state. When Mao Zedong passed away on September 9, 1976, he left behind an economy in turmoil and an impoverished population. After Mao's death, a great search for direction began. The real transformation started with Deng Xiaoping, who came to power in 1978. His first task was to abolish the people's communes. This reform led to a rapid increase in production, efficiency, and peasant income. In 1980, 4 major port cities were declared special economic zones. In these regions, foreign investments were liberalized. Shenzhen became the symbol of these reforms. By the end of the decade, it had transformed into a massive, modern metropolis. However, the income gap between the city and the countryside increased rapidly, and state enterprises began to suffer losses. In 1989, thousands gathered in Tiananmen Square, demanding democracy. After 6 weeks, the army intervened. The images spread throughout the world. Yet, Deng had to leave his post to Jiang Zemin. The new president was determined to promote China in the field of global trade. As a result, China attracted global companies with its low-cost labor force. Multi-billion-dollar export volume was reached. In 1997, the United Kingdom handed over Hong Kong, and in 1999, Portugal handed over Macau to the People's Republic of China. China's accession to the WTO in 2001 was a turning point. By 2008, exports reached $1.4 trillion. Hu Jintao took over. Now it was time for infrastructure. Hundreds of highways, bridges, and high-speed train lines were built. Mega airports were constructed. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, China was almost unaffected. It became America's largest creditor, coming to the present day. Xi Jinping, who turned China into a superpower, became president in 2013. He announced a 15-year development plan targeting world leadership in key sectors: aviation, robotics, semiconductors, and AI. Huawei and Xiaomi became leaders in 5G. EV manufacturers became rivals to Tesla. However, this rise caused serious concern in the West. Trump imposed embargoes on Huawei. This started a trade war between America and China. Despite the embargoes, China has become the second largest economy. Experts say it will be the world's most powerful by 2040. In addition, a major breakthrough was made in military power. By 2017, China possessed the largest navy in the world. Alongside this power, the People's Republic of China is also a world leader in human rights violations, particularly against Uyghur Turks. Increasing military pressure on Taiwan brings the risk of war. China is now reborn as a global giant seeking a new order. The rise of China remains one of the most significant shifts in modern history. What do you think the future holds for this global giant? Do you believe a new global order is on the horizon? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into world history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.